So how about
Yeah, that's
that, or
great.
you want to talk about it in the room?
No, that's good.
Okay, well, the first most common error that happens, and all of these are errors of omission as opposed to errors of commission. So the first one is that sailors tend to either not read their sailing instructions or they don't read them carefully enough. And it's an awful lot of good information contained in the sailing instructions. For example, at this event, a lot of sailors have missed the fact that the scoring penalty is in effect on Alpha and Bravo courses, not the turns penalty.
So you're saying a 720 is just extra distance sailed and it doesn't exonerate them?
Correct.
Oops.
Yeah, big oops. And if it does come to a protest, you know, your penalties are escalating all the time. Once you come ashore, the penalty turns from 20% to a possible 40, or a disqualification if you wind up in the room itself. So it's good information to have, and also it's actually was stated in the notice of race that the scoring penalty would apply because you have to have a yellow flag.
We gave them, we handed them out.
Well, then there's no excuse.
There really is.
But I can imagine the people going, why is this yellow piece of fabric in my kit? Because a lot of sailors just didn't realize that the scoring penalty was in effect.
So that just didn't read the instructions.
Right. And then from there, you know, if you're not familiar with the scoring penalty, you kind of need to go and read the rule about it because there's a whole procedure that you have to follow. It includes not just displaying the flag, but you're the one who has to draw the attention of the race committee to the flag at the finishing line and then tell them who the other boat was in the incident. Because if you don't, then they can't give you the penalty. So again, the penalty would not be taken. And you're again running a risk of an increased penalty later on.
How fast do I have to fly that yellow flag?
Pretty quick.
Meaning?
As fast as you can get your hand on
I
it.
have half an hour, I have that
No.
leg, I have what?
You got maybe a minute at the outside. I recommend, as I do with protest flags, that you have it attached to the boat, ready to go.
What's the theory?
The theory? It's part of your equipment.
So, incident, and before you're out of shouting range?
Yeah, red flag protest, and you better decide, did I break the rule or not?
Before you're out of
Within
shouting
about a
range.
minute, before you're out of shouting range. Because this guy needs to see that you're taking the penalty.
So, think of it that way, before you're out of shouting range. It's a real simple way to think about it. Get it done. Okay, you have a quick decision to make. Okay, under this rule, we always talk about it in advance, okay? If this happens, we do this. If this happens, it's the what ifs are pre-thought and pre-talked about. So it's a quicker reaction, and it makes for better racing, in fact. Unless you like going to the room and sitting up there and spending hours.
I mean, we have to sit around, so we like the company, but you know, it's not so good for you guys.
So you show the yellow flag to accept the penalty.
Yeah, and you have to leave it displayed until you finish. Make sure the race committee sees it and tell them, you know, we fouled so-and-so, or we fouled boat 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
And then that way they can apply the scoring penalty to your score.
But can they, if they feel that you deserve to be disqualified, they can still say it?
Well, there's one little hiccup there, and it's the same hiccup that you have when the turns penalty is the penalty. If you cause serious damage or injury, or you gain an advantage by your foul, then the penalty is not turns, or it's not scoring penalty. You must retire. And that's the interesting thing about our sport. I'll just read this because it's written very well.
Did you write it?
No, smarter people than me wrote this.
But you're featured in this book as being one of the authors.
No, I'm the typesetter. And I'm on the rules committee. So we decide on the prescriptions, but the rules themselves are ISA. It says so in the front. But anyway, the basic principle of our sport is sportsmanship and the rules. And I'm going to read this verbatim because it's really interesting. Competitors in the sport of sailing are governed by a body of rules that they are expected to follow, which that makes sense, and enforce. Okay, we don't enforce the rules. You guys are the ones who enforce the rules. It goes on to say, the fundamental principle of sportsmanship is that when competitors break a rule, they will promptly take a penalty, which may be to retire. So that's really important. It says that, you know,
Self-policing.
yes, that protesting another boat is part of the rules, part of how the sport is played. Because we don't have referees out there. You guys are the referees. A lot of people, and this is when I'm getting ahead of myself, but the third most common error is not protecting yourself when there is an incident, not hailing protests, not displaying your red flag. By doing that at the time, gives you the option of following through with protest. If you don't do that, and you decide later that you'd like to protest, guess what? You're out of luck. And as well, a lot of sailors think that when a boat doesn't sail the course properly, that it's the race committee's responsibility to do something about that. No, it's not. The only time that they might consider doing something is if no one else was in a position to see it. But if you guys see someone not rounding the mark properly, you got to protest him. It's the only way he's going to have, the only way that there's any chance that he would be disqualified for that. Someone has to protest, and it should be one of you, not one of us.
Now, when you have multiple races, I find sometimes you sail multiple races and then, you know, you had a protest in race one, you sail 3 races and you come in and you're just kind of done. You don't remember the situation clearly. What's the trick there?
Notebook. Between races, jot some notes down. Maybe sail over to someone that, you know, might have seen the incident and say, you know, did you see what that idiot did back at that mark? You know, see if you can get, you know, find out what he saw, because maybe he'd make a good witness for you. Jot down sail numbers, stuff that you might forget later. Because yeah, I've been there. You're wasted by the time you get ashore, especially like with some of the distances even that it takes for you guys to get back. So make some notes, and actually, you know, it's not a bad idea to have some protest forms on the boat. Maybe get the form filled out while you're coming in.
Try your diagram, get your crew together. Hey, this is, in other words, you literally write the form between races, and you know, not all the details and all the little tiny stuff, but you get the basic picture, and you draw 1, 2, 3. You draw your diagram, so you have it in your mind, and you have it ready, and you can. What I find psychologically, that's a beautiful thing, because it's a breath of fresh air. I've dealt with it, I've put it aside, I don't have to spend bandwidth thinking about this for the next race and the next race.
Absolutely.
It's aside.
Yeah.
So I have a new, fresh attitude for the next race. And that, when you sail multiple races, attitude is everything, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way I don't get bugged by the previous one.